Picture this. The final, tense days of August 1939. Europe is a powder keg, and the fuse is burning short. The world is holding its breath, teetering on the brink of a catastrophe that will change history forever. This is the story of the last moments of peace, the frantic negotiations, and the fateful decisions that plunged the world into World War II. Our story begins in the aftermath of World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to ensure peace, instead planted seeds of resentment. Germany, crippled by reparations and stripped of territory, felt deeply humiliated. Across the country, a sense of injustice festered, creating fertile ground for extremist ideologies. Into this volatile atmosphere stepped Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, promising to restore Germany's former glory. By the late 1930s, Hitler had already begun to challenge the European order. He remilitarized the Rhineland, annexed Austria, hielt the Anschluss, and then set his sights on Czechoslovakia. The leaders of Britain and France, haunted by the memory of the Great War, pursued a policy of appeasement. At the Munich Conference in 19, they handed over the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia to Hitler, believing his promises that this was his final territorial demand. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain famously returned home, waving a piece of paper and declaring peace for our time. But this peace was built on a fragile illusion. Just months later, in March 1939, Hitler shattered that illusion by invading the rest of Czechoslovakia. The policy of appeasement was dead. Britain and France finally realized that Hitler couldn't be trusted. They quickly issued a guarantee of independence to Poland, which was clearly Hitler's next target. Any German attack on Poland would now mean war with the Western Allies. As the summer of 1939 blazed on, the tension became unbearable. Hitler was obsessed with reclaiming the city of Danzig and the Polish corridor, a strip of land that separated East Prussia from the rest of Germany. All summer, the Nazi propaganda machine worked overtime, inventing stories of Polish atrocities against ethnic Germans to create a pretext for invasion. Diplomatic channels were buzzing, but it felt like everyone was just going through the motions. Then came the bombshell. On August 23, 1939, the world was stunned to learn that Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, two sworn ideological enemies, had signed a non-aggression pact. This was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Publicly, it was a simple agreement not to attack each other, but secretly, it contained a protocol to carve up Poland and other parts of Eastern Europe between them. For Hitler, this was the green light. The pact neutralized his biggest fear, a two-front war. He believed Britain and France wouldn't dare fight him without the mighty Soviet Union on their side. He was now free to unleash his military might on Poland. The invasion was initially set for August 26th, but just hours before the attack was to begin, two things happened. First, Britain formalized its alliance with Poland, making their commitment ironclad. Second, Hitler received a personal letter from Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, admitting that Italy was not militarily ready to join a war. Hitler hesitated. He called off the invasion at the last minute, creating a brief, final window for peace. The last week of August was a whirlwind of desperate, last-ditch diplomacy. There were frantic telegrams, proposals, and counter-proposals flying between Berlin, London, and Warsaw. Swedish businessman Birger Delaris, acting as an unofficial go-between, shuttled back and forth, trying to broker a meeting. On the evening of August 29th, Hitler gave the British ambassador a final offer. It was a 16-point proposal, but he demanded that a Polish negotiator with full powers to sign a deal arrive in Berlin the very next day. This was an impossible ultimatum. It wasn't a genuine offer for negotiation. It was a trap designed to make Poland look like the unreasonable party. The Poles, remembering how the Czech president had been bullied into submission in Berlin, refused to send a representative under such duress. They would negotiate, Batas equals not, as a nation being summoned to surrender. By August 31st, the atmosphere in Berlin was electric. Hitler had already signed the order for the invasion to commence the next morning. All that was needed was the final justification. That evening, Nazi SS officers, dressed in Polish army uniforms, staged a fake attack on a German radio station in the border town of Gliwice. They broadcast a short anti-German message in Polish and left behind the bodies of concentration camp prisoners, also dressed in Polish uniforms, to make it look like an authentic Polish raid. This was Operation Himmler, the manufactured excuse Hitler needed. The German press screamed with headlines about Polish aggression. That night, at 10 p.m., Berlin radio stations interrupted their programs to read out Hitler's 16-point proposal, for the first time the one the Poles had never even officially received, and then immediately declared that Poland had rejected it. The stage was set. At dawn on September 1st, 1939, without a formal declaration of war, German forces stormed across the Polish border. The Luftwaffe bombed cities, including Warsaw, while panzer divisions sliced through Polish defenses with a new, terrifying tactic: the Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. In London and Paris, the news was met with disbelief and grim resolve. They issued an ultimatum to Germany: withdraw your troops from Poland immediately, or a state of war will exist between us. The deadline was set. The world watched and waited. Hitler, ensconced in his chancellery, ignored the ultimatum. He had gambled that Britain and France would back down again. He was wrong. On the morning of September 3rd, the British ultimatum expired. At 11:15 a.m., Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain addressed the nation by radio. His voice was somber, filled with the weight of failure. He announced that Britain was now at war with Germany. A few hours later, France followed suit. The final moments of peace had slipped away. The diplomatic maneuvering, the last-minute hopes, the ultimatums, they were all over. The Blitzkrieg in Poland was just the opening act of a global conflict that would last 6 years, consume millions of lives, and reshape the entire world. The fire that had been smoldering in Europe had finally erupted into a devastating inferno. Thanks for watching. If you found this glimpse into the past compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history's most pivotal moments. See you in the next video.